This afternoon's session has to deal with autism and children on the autism spectrum. Our speakers include Elisa Gagnon.
Hello, Lisa.
And Brenda Smith-Miles.
Hi, Brenda. Hi, Brenda.
Were any of you in Gatlinburg in 2009? No? Were you? Brenda was one of our presenters at that event, way back when. So she did such a fabulous job, and she has been a big help to me, and has introduced me to some very wonderful people. And it's just been, and I have to tell you, there was a real driving force behind Santa America getting involved with doing a focus on autism. And as we were trying to develop things and looking for resources, somebody that I knew here in town referred me to Brenda. And Brenda invited me out to her house one day. And I went to her house, and one of her friends was there, a lady named Judy Endow. And Judy has her master's in social work, and she is on the autism spectrum. And Judy is only a few years younger than I am. And in the course of our conversation, I asked, Judy, tell me about your Santa experiences when you were a child. And she was very thoughtful about it. She goes, well, I almost got to see Santa Claus one time. And it absolutely broke my heart. And it was like, wow. There's many thousands and thousands of children that are on the spectrum deserve better than that from us. So that is why we are focused on this as an area for Santa America. So with that, I think we're going to have fun, we're going to learn a lot, and learn some new ways to visit children. So it's yours.
Thank you very much, Santa John. Elisa and I are delighted to be here today. And we'll just be kind of sharing the presentation. And in addition, we would like this to be a sharing, because I know many of you have had experiences working with children with autism. And I know that your information will really enrich us all. Elisa and I would like to start with a brief video. And as you're watching it, you may wonder what this has to do with autism. And she and I will explain it at the end.
So this life is given everyone a present, beautiful, shiny and new. Everyone but you. Golden ribbons, diamonds line everyone's path that leads to wide open doors. Everyone's but you. Hold on, keep on, even when the road seems very long. Open your eyes, even if it's cold now. There's one thing you should know. Rain will turn into snow. All your turns to sun.
Sometimes the simplest things can make all the difference in the world. And we know that you will be bringing to our children with autism something that many of them have not had before. It's very interesting that Santa John mentioned our good friend Judy Endow, because we also were struck by the opportunity to visit Santa. The Santas didn't understand autism and didn't know the simple strategies that can make all the difference in the world. We need some input from you right now. We need to know, what are the parts of a Santa visit? Huh?
Bringing happiness to children.
Okay, bringing happiness to children.
Their first sight.
Their first sight of you. Okay, wonderful.
Thinking from the child's perspective.
The child's perspective. Okay,
Going to the venue.
going to the venue. Okay,
Big crowds. Long lines.
exactly. Yes,
Preparation, both child and Santa.
excellent.
Know your child.
Know your child. Okay, I'm not sure you guys are going to need us. It doesn't seem like it. Okay, Elisa and I tried to look at what the parts were of a typical Santa visit, because we wanted to look at each one of those areas to see if there were some supports that could be helpful to our children. And so we identified that there is a before, okay, which may include checking in, which may include standing in line, and also includes, being nice to the other people around you. Does that sound kind of like what happened before? Okay. Then we have the during, where you can sit on Santa's lap or stand next to him, where you talk to him, where you have your picture taken, and again, you're being nice. Does that seem to kind of fit? Sort of, kind of? Uh-oh, okay, sort of. What do you mean by sort of?
I know, I visit an autistic children's academy every year.
Uh-huh.
And that is used in, we don't sit on Santa's lap. It's like a lot of times I'm on the Christmas tree up on the floor with the child. We don't do bells.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, exactly.
Parent permission, we know our kids.
Okay, great. Okay, perfect. And we're going to be talking about those things, so you're like a little bit confused. And afterward, in the traditional Santa visit, you usually leave Santa and you share information with a parent or caregiver, and again, you are nice to the people around you. Well, sometimes these things, as they're written, don't work well for the child with autism. And we want to do what we can to make life better for our kids and to provide them with this experience. Elisa and I thought that we would also tell you a little bit about the autistic brain. Because sometimes if you just have an understanding of how the child thinks and sees the world, it makes life a little bit easier for everyone. For example, here are two pictures of brains. This brain over here is the neurotypical brain. That's the brain that you and I have. And neurotypical is the term that autistic people use to describe people who aren't autistic. And then over here is the autistic brain. And you'll see two colors. There's an aqua, which is the ability to really understand what you hear. And then there's that purplish pink, which is the ability to understand what you see. Now, if you are neurotypical, you can see that there's an even amount of aqua and pink, which means that typical kids can understand whether you show them or whether you tell them. But what about the child with autism? How does he best get information? Okay, he sees it. Okay? Sometimes our kids with autism, even if they are really smart, if you use a lot of words, they might not pick up those words. But if you show them pictures, many times they understand their world a little bit better. So Lisa and I are going to be sharing with you some ways to use pictures to help our kids. Here are two other brain scans. Now, on this side, you will see a brain labeled Asperger's. Now, Asperger's is a term that has been used to describe people with autism who have average or above average IQs. Okay? And then over here is a neurotypical brain. Well, this shows brain activity when the brain of the neurotypical person and the person with autism are at rest. Now, what this means is that a child with autism, if he is standing by you, he is probably thinking, oh my gosh, look at the bells, look at the shoes, oh my gosh, there's something over there that I have to attend to. He just said something, oh, I didn't quite pick it up, but oh my gosh, I really love that grade over there. Okay? So our child may be attending to a whole lot of things instead of at what we think they are looking at. And so we're going to talk about some ways to help make sure that you have their attention so that they understand what's going on. There are parts of the brain that are responsible for keeping us calm and focused. And research shows that for folks with autism, those parts of the brain are not operating as well as we wish. Now, the nice thing when I share this information is that by giving our kids with autism these experiences, we're actually growing their brain connections. And so that means by creating a successful Santa visit, what you're doing is not only creating a successful Santa visit, but you're giving that child new experiences that will help him be calm in other situations. So that is pretty awesome. Okay? So our kids are not as well wired, if you will, to stay calm and be focused. And many times our children with autism may have anxiety or they may have meltdowns. Now, meltdowns is the term that we use instead of tantrums, because when people think about kids having tantrums, what do they think? Yeah, they're angry, it's on purpose, it's manipulative, okay? But for our kids, when they have meltdowns, it's just because of the way their brain is wired, okay? All of our kids who want to see Santa start out thinking, I want to have a great visit. But they are overwhelmed by anxiety. Individuals with autism like to know what's happening next. They like consistency. They like predictability. You might think that it's boring, but that consistency and predictability makes our kids really happy and calm. Our kids also are big worriers. If they hear that they are going to visit Santa and they're not well prepared, what will they do, Lisa?
If they will have a meltdown. And if we can do more to prepare them for the visit so they know what's going to happen, then we are more likely, not always, but more likely than to have a successful visit. And the kids might also have something that we're terming here happy tantrums, but this is where they're just so overwhelmed that they are screaming and yelling in excitement. I have a friend who's now an adult with autism and took him out for his birthday not too long ago. And on his birthday cake, he had, when they brought it to the restaurant, to the table, it had like a little sparkler on the top. He became so excited that he stood on his chair and started jumping up and down in complete excitement for that. Now, this excitement became so big that he actually started crying because it was that he was very excited and very pleased that he was there. But to look at it, particularly in a young man, it looked really unfocused and really like he was on that verge of a tantrum, when in reality, it was just him being completely and totally happy.
Here are a couple of brief segments showing meltdowns of children. Well, one's of a child and one is of a young adult. He is genuinely concerned about what is going to happen. Chances are he has no idea what's going to happen and he is fearful and doing what he can to protect himself from something he perceives as not positive.
And more than likely, he has been told. And so it looks like he's just having brat behavior. When in reality, because he hasn't been shown and he hasn't experienced before, the result is the meltdown.
Here is a young adult having a meltdown. It's quite heartbreaking.
That's a nervous animal that she had.
Yes, it was. Yes, and that dog actually, served to help her calm down whenever she had meltdowns. And many of our, well, not many, but several of our children with autism may have service animals that are with them that really help them a lot.
Question.
Yeah,
Are you gonna, little on, talk to us about how to work with the service animal as well?
well,
As a child?
we hadn't thought about it, but we certainly can. So, we will do that. If we don't, just make sure we do. Okay. Individuals with autism, as I said earlier, don't like change. They like things to be consistent and predictable. If our child likes peanut butter sandwiches, chances are he'll want a peanut butter sandwich for every day of the year. And we'll be going, oh my gosh, we are so bored of peanut butter sandwiches. But for this kiddo, oh my gosh, it's wonderful. And if one day he gets a bologna sandwich and he's not prepared for it, he will have a meltdown. And in fact, the research on change says that our folks with autism process a small change, small from our perspective, such as maybe mom being 2 minutes early to pick a child up from an activity, or maybe having to wait 5 minutes longer than was anticipated for Santa. This translates to how we process losing a job. Now, if any of you have ever lost a job before, it is devastating. Now, can you imagine feeling that way 4, 5, 6, or 7 times a day? Okay? And our child who is not properly supported experiences that.
And the other thing with this is when we think about what children with autism like or appreciate, it's that sameness. It's things being the same. And when we think about the holiday season, it is a big change. Not just visiting Santa, but everything associated with it. So the more we can do to prepare them for the activities throughout the holidays, the more successful and the better it'll be for the family.
Sensory. I was talking to one of the Santas earlier, and he was talking about that he was a sensory day at school. And what he does is strips away a lot of the sensory elements. Now, our children with autism have sensory challenges. For example, I could be on the phone, and I know a child with autism who could be outside that door and could hear what this person is saying. Some of our kids hear things that you and I do not. And when we talk about hearing a pin drop, some of our children with autism can't hear that. We also know that for some of our kids with autism, touch can be painful. In particular, a light touch for some people with autism is very, very unpleasant. But a more firm touch for some of our kids is more comfortable. Our kids, as shown in this brain scan, react more to all sensory areas. Now, these brains just show a brain scan when sound is presented, but if you will see the typically developing person and the person with autism, look how much more yellow and red, which is brain activity, is apparent. Sounds can be very disturbing to our children, Like, for example, the bells, okay, can be sometimes very problematic for our kids. Lights or colors, sometimes bright lights, bright colors can be extremely problematic. We know kids who have an aversion to a certain color. Like, for example, a child who, if they are around the color yellow, becomes overwhelmed. Smells. Our kids can be impacted by smells. If Santa's were cologne,
No, sorry.
if Santa's were cologne, I would say
And smells can, sometimes they can respond to smells in an angry way. Smells can make them angry. Now, to me, having an angry reaction to smell would be ridiculous. But for children with the autism, something is triggered, and those smells may trigger that. A student I know in a public school, his aversion is the smell of corn. And on the days that they cook corn in the cafeteria, they actually move him to another part of the building. We can't change what the menu is going to be in a public school, but what we can do is know in advance and move him somewhere else to avoid that smell.
now some of our kids also would use
Candy canes
smell.
could be, yes.
Sorry.
He said candy canes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
It could be.
It could be.
Exactly. Now, some of our kids will also seek out smells. Like, for example, you may have a child with autism who needs to touch you, okay, or shake your hand, and then they'll smell their hand. Or if they're sitting near you, they may like go up to smell your beard to see what it smells like. And so, not only are some kids, somewhat aversive to some smells, but they will seek other smells out. Taste. Our kids are the ones that can tell the generic Pop-Tarts from the real Pop-Tarts, even if you put the generic Pop-Tarts in the real box. So, if you advertise a certain brand of candy canes and our child knows that brand, and you substitute, no one else may know, but our child won't. There are kids with autism that might make will eat 5 foods. Yeah, okay. Okay, and here are some elements of sensory that are apparent in some individuals. And we have a slide that we're going to show in just a minute that says when you see one child with autism, you see one child with autism. And so all of these may not apply to every child with autism. And in fact, there may be some characteristics that we have not talked about that are apparent in some children. But for example, I hate having my hair cut, washed, or brushed. Patting a child on the head with autism may be a problematic thing because it can actually, touching their hair can actually hurt their hair. I can be very selective with food and resist certain textures or smells. The Santa I was talking to earlier when we talked about Sensory Santa Day, he wears a sweater instead of the entire Santa suit because it's more comfortable for some of the kids. I can touch others too soft or too hard. Okay, a child with autism may go out to catch you and not realize that they are hitting you hard because they just can't tell. Okay? In addition, soft touch may be problematic. I cannot tolerate specific textiles or tags on my clothing. Hey, some of our kids will only wear a certain brand of a certain sweatsuit all year, even if it's 90 degrees. They like that consistency. I can detest being tickled and cuddled, or I can adore being squeezed into soft. Okay? Some of our kids will hug you very tight. Other kids don't want to.
Part of my job before I retired is I would do lots of observations in classrooms. I was a teacher. So I would observe, and when I would first go in, I would tell the teacher that I didn't want them to tell me who the child they were concerned about was, who the child with autism was in the room. And I could usually pick them out based on their clothing. They would be the ones in the Kmart sweatsuits. in the sweats, sometimes on the inside out so they didn't feel the seams. So, but what we see this, because of the way their sensory system is operating, they are needing certain types of clothes in order to be comfortable. These are also the kids who will put their socks on with the seam to the outside.
And so if we try to get our kids to dress in, Christmas wear, it just may not be possible for them because of their sensory system. I can be clumsy and stumble over things. Many of our kids, are likely to trip over something or even their own feet. I can walk on my tiptoes. I like to wear the same shoes regardless of the weather, or I always want to talk or walk barefoot. You may have a child with autism who sees you barefoot because the feeling of shoes on their feet is so uncomfortable. I have poor gross motor skills such as riding a bike or climbing a stairway. I have difficulty dressing myself. Many of our kids don't have the same level of skills as other kids. Even with dressing themselves, some teenagers with autism still need assistance with that. I like to smell people, food, or objects. As we talked, you may be sniffed by a child with autism. I have poor fine motor skills. Asking a child to do an activity with a pencil or even a crayon for a lot of kids is comfortable, but for some of our kids can cause a meltdown. Many people with autism will tell me that it hurts holding something in their hand. I like to chew on different materials and textiles. Our children will be perhaps chewing on the cuffs of their sleeves. They may have a fidget that they are chewing on. They may have their fingers in their mouths. They may perpetually have a straw with them, or they may be chewing on gum because that allows them to become a little bit more comfortable in their environment.
Or they may be chewing on your cuff.
No, yes, absolutely. I can be oversensitive to loud sounds such as blenders or car horns. I shield my eyes from bright lights or stare at them. Now, our children may come to your visit with a baseball cap on or with sunglasses on, even though it is winter, because the fluorescent lights in the environment are overwhelming. And many people with autism can see fluorescent lights flickering. It's absolutely amazing. Where you and I do not. And many people can hear fluorescent lights also buzzing. So the environment around our kids sometimes is so unfriendly. Here is a brief video of a child with autism in a sensory environment.
I'm autistic, and I just get too much information.
Okay. Now, that was a young man walking through a typical mall. Now, if you were a Santa in the mall, by the time he got to you, the best part of his day is already over because he experienced such a Now, here is another video, and we wanted to show you this because it compares the sensory experience of you and I to a child with or an individual with autism. And this video was made in the UK. And the first part of the video is a neurotypical person walking down the street and the experiences that he has. The second part of the video is an individual with autism who is walking down the street, the same street with different experiences. You know, we should say something. I should have said something to start out with. You can say autistic child or child with autism, and those terms are perfectly okay, whichever way you want to use them, but you probably want to stay away from words like handicapped or impaired. Definitely the R word, you guys know that, right? Do you know the R word is bad? Do you know what the R word is? Okay, okay, everybody does, okay. Huh? It's reverse, yeah, that's it, yeah. People with autism do not walk in reverse. Oh, that's not on the video. Because I wasn't sure. But anyway, here is, first of all, a neurotypical individual walking down the street. Okay. There's not a lot of noise. We're kind of walking down the street, kind of la-di-da. Okay, we kind of see things, we kind of don't. This is the person walk down the street. Our children with autism also have challenges with problem solving. My philosophy in life is that life is nothing but